the BirdGuides Podcast.
Welcome to the BirdGuides Podcast with me, Josh Jones, and I'm joined by David Campbell. Hi, David.
Hiya.
And Ian Lycett. How you doing, Ian?
Josh, I'm all right, thanks. Yourself?
Very well, thank you very much. Now, it's warm outside, the sun is shining, the days are long. It's a quiet time of year for birding overall, but write July off at your peril. This month has produced a smorgasbord of extreme rarities over the years, and in today's episode, we'll be looking back fondly and sometimes not so fondly, at some of July's biggest British and Irish birding moments. Now, Ian, what does July mean to you? You must have seen a few good rarities in July over the years.
Yeah, one or two. I always find it's a month where you kind of think you can not quite hang your bins up, but you expect it to be a little bit quieter than maybe the peak months of sort of, May and October, and then sometimes something left field will come out, and of course waders start coming back. So I've seen a few good waders over the years. I was looking back through some notes in preparation for this and discovered that it's 40 years since the red-necked stint at Blacktoft, which was first for Britain at the time. And yeah, that was a good day. I'd been looking for a ferruginous duck somewhere in the sort of Yorkshire zone, and then phoned Nancy's, which was the only way to get bird news back in the day. Whacked a £1 coin into the phone, and yeah, somebody sort of read out the book. Oh, that funny stint that's been at Blacktoft's been re-identified as summer plumage red-necked. I go, okay. Well, we weren't too far away, so we ploughed up for that. Brief queue to get into the hide, and then, yeah, this thing came pottering out. And you go, blimey, that's a red-necked stint, isn't it? That was fantastic. And we finished the day off after that with Tetney RSPB, where we had both Pacific and American golden plovers.
Wow, what a day.
Yeah, it was a classic day out.
Well, it definitely produces days like this from time to time, July. David, you've probably got a few standout moments yourself.
Yeah, I remember, it's a season of seabirds and waders, really, isn't it, which we'll be delving into later, but there's certainly been a few twitches I've enjoyed over the years, including one of my earliest ever twitches, which was not for the rarest bird, but over at Rainham Marshes before it was actually open. Went for a collared Pratt and Cull there. I think that was my second ever twitch. In July, Howard Vaughan, who was managing the reserve at the time, kindly opened it up for visitors. And yeah, that was a very formative memory for me, and yeah, plenty since then, including again at Rainham, white-tailed lapwing and so on. But yeah, I'm sure we'll delve into more later on.
Yeah, there's been plenty of standout rares over the years, but of course it is a time where you can never quite rest on your laurels. You're just always expecting, even though when you're looking at bird guides from day to day, it can be incredibly quiet with only a few tens of reports, but they can be really good quality reports, I think, is the key thing. I mean, of course, as you've just mentioned there, David, it is a good time for seabirds. And, I'll take you back to 2nd of July 2007. Can you remember what you were up to that day?
It's probably at school on summer holidays, yeah.
Yourself in? No?
2nd of July 2007. No. Enlighten me.
Well, I can tell you where I was, and also where an Atlantic Yellow-nosed Albatross was, and that was both in Lincolnshire. Unbeknown to me, about 40 miles or so up the road from where I live, there was a yellow-nosed albatross swimming around on a fishing pond. Of course, this was only the latest twist in what was quite a remarkable tale for that bird. Technically, it was found at the end of June. I think it was the 29th of June it was found in Somerset. Bizarre circumstances, I think, Ian.
Yeah, I think somebody was trying to reverse out of their drive and found a seabird blocking the way, so they shuffled it into a cardboard box and took it down to some sort of local sea life centre or something, and they thought it was a gannet, so gave it a few sardines and then literally threw it off a cliff at Brean Down. Upon it, promptly disappeared without any birders seeing it, and then subsequently turned up at these fishing pits. And I think there was a fisherman who was sort of casting his lure out, and as these seabirds are wont to do when they're in the South Atlantic, sort of thought, oh, well, this must mean food, came ploughing in, scattering Canada and grey-lag geese to the all corners and trying to nick his float. And I think it sat there overnight until early the following morning, and then headed off, not seen by any birders, and subsequently turned up off Malmo in Sweden.
Yeah, it was seen flying inland past some high-rise buildings, wasn't it? Never to be seen again.
Yeah, bizarre. But I think if you join the dots between all those places, it's actually a dead straight line.
Yeah.
It's just remarkable. That flew completely under the radar
Yeah.
of birders. And I remember it being a talking point at the time that the rehabilitation centre didn't take the chance to, raise some funds, announce when they were going to be releasing this bird, and letting a crowd come along and see it. I don't really remember what their reasoning was for that, but yeah, I think secret was actually part of their name of this rehabilitation centre, which is ironic.
Yeah, I don't recall. I'm not sure they realised quite how rare it was. It just sort of, funny seabird, just,
Yeah.
open a can of sardines and, rehabilitate it and let it out.
It was amazing. I mean, I seem to recall, I can't remember exactly just how quickly the news came out, but I always remember seeing the photographs of this bird with the grey-lag geese on that pond in Lincolnshire and just feeling sick as a parrot, knowing that I was, less than 50 miles from this bird where it was probably there, almost 24 hours. Could easily have been twitched, but that's just the way it goes, isn't it? So that's the way the cookie crumbles when non-birders find birds. You just never know if it's gonna get out or not. But yellow-nosed albatross, of course, is far from the only mega seabird that's occurred in July, and I cast my mind back to early July 2013, which was in itself a very truly remarkable summer for rare birds. But I think it was the 5th of July. From memory, if I recall, I think it was possibly. I remember that because it's my dad's birthday. It was certainly around that time anyway. But yeah, I seem to recall I was working on the bird news that day and opened up opened up the sightings emails to find that there was a message about a frigatebird somewhere in Argyll. Isla was suspected to be the case. It kind of all pieced together, and you're thinking, here we go. And then all of a sudden, bang! These photographs dropped into the BirdGuides sightings inbox. There it was, just sat there like a big lemon on the sea wall at Bowmore. This juvenile Ascension frigatebird.
So was that an angler who took those photos? Or
I think it was Norwegian holidaymakers.
Yes, it was. Yeah, it was just, and they'd reported it, I think, to the local RSPB ranger or something.
They were having breakfast and they'd seen this strange bird sitting on the sea wall that was being harassed by gulls, and they thought, it must be an eagle or something. So they'd taken some photos and shown the local guys at the RSPB reserve. I think they is this an eagle? And he told them it wasn't an eagle. I don't think that was seen by any birders either, was it?
It was a bit of a weird one, wasn't it? Because you immediately in that situation you kind of think, well, this bird's going to be on its last legs, it's going to be in trouble, it's probably moribund, it's going to need picking up and rehabilitating or something. But birders were down there not long afterwards, a matter of hours, and it wasn't there. It had disappeared. And I seem to recall there were some unconfirmed reports latterly somewhere else in Western Scotland, which were never firmed up. But clearly this bird was fine and it just disappeared. But yeah, that was a mind-blowing record. But of course it wasn't without precedent, because Britain's only other Ascension frigatebird was also July, and that was back in 1953 on Tiree. Almost to the date, I think. I think it was within a week. It was early mid-July.
Yeah, it was quite a coincidence.
Yeah. Now, of course, 2013 was an amazing summer for rarities, with several turning up in July, but also some in late June. It had kind of kicked off with two mega swifts in late June, the needletail in the Azure Hebrides and fork-tailed swift in Suffolk, both of which were twitchable to a degree. The fork-tailed, or Pacific as it was known then, particularly so. I think it was available for more than 24 hours. But the run continued into early July. Ian, you saw the Pacific Swift, didn't you?
I did see the Pacific Swift, which was a relief because I'd missed that one at Clyde back in, I think it was about 93 maybe, by about 10 minutes, which always grated. And I never really expected to have the opportunity to go and see another one in the UK. So that was particularly good to sort of get that back and heal that wound. And you, of course, managed to get to see the needletail up in the Outer Hebrides before it slammed into a wind turbine, didn't you?
Yeah, as David as well.
Yeah, I actually saw it slamming into the wind turbine.
Oh, really?
And I also got the Pacific Swift, so yeah, tailed Swift. So it was a very good swifty summer.
It was, and that run continued into early July, as I was saying. We've just talked about the Ascension frigatebird, but a few days before the frigatebird, there was news from Northumberland on the Farne Islands, bridal tern. I don't know if, Ian, you will have already seen bridal tern, but David...
Yeah, I've seen a couple now. One at Kemlyn Bay in Anglesey, way back in the day, and another one at Hanningfield Reservoir, of all places.
What?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I went to try and see a white-winged tern at Tilbury, and there was nobody sort of there, and then a couple of birders came back and said, the white-winged tern's sort of still here over there, but everyone's just gone round the bend to see where the bridal tern's gone.
Wow.
So I missed it on the Thames, and then about 2 hours later it got found at Hanningfield, and it spent the rest of the afternoon and evening at Hanningfield just
Remarkable.
ploughing around.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I didn't really get great views of the 2013 bird in the Farns. We took a boat trip out on the the morning of the first full day, I should say, and we had it pretty much instantly, I think from memory, pretty quickly anyway, and it was flying around. You think, oh, here we go, it's just going to hang around, and then it just did what they do and flew out to sea, and that was that.
But you only got a brief sort of time with it.
Yeah, it weren't great views, to be honest, but of course it went on to show very well over the following weeks, I think. And, July really does have form for rare terns, doesn't it? I mean, there was, of course, that bridal tern that a lot of people saw, but a lot of people saw bridal tern at Kemlyn Lagoon.
Yeah.
That was that the late 80s?
Yeah, it was a big crowd for that one.
Yeah, I bet.
And Kemlyn, of course, has an incredible record with rare terns over the years. And I think, David, will you have seen this? But certainly Ian and I will have had good memories from Kemlyn of sooty tern in 2005.
I remember it coming up, but that was just before my twitching era. Yeah.
That was an amazing bird. I mean, that was found on the Skerries, which is kind of some rocky islets off Anglesey. And I remember there were quite a few intrepid twitchers organising boat trips to get out there.
Yeah.
Quite challenging to get there. Then it went to Ireland for a couple of days, I think.
That's right.
And then it gave itself up at Kemlyn for the next couple of weeks on and off, and hundreds saw it, if not thousands.
Yeah, very popular. Fantastic place, Kemlyn Bay. Love it.
Yes, it is beautiful. Really
Terns
is.
do take you to cool places. I think the only time I've been to the Farns was for that bridal tern, which I got pretty well. And, you've got the puffins and Arctic terns flying around as well. So, yeah, you get a whole wider experience through these summer terns quite a lot of the time.
And the Farns has also had sooty terns since, hasn't it? In more recent years. And of course, the Farlands is very famous for one particular tern, Elsie, the lesser crested tern, which put in performances there for several years running. And there's some slightly surreal circumstances to its discovery, weren't there?
If I remember rightly, it was sort of a forerunner to Spring Watch with Tony Soper sort of talking over the day's footage from the Farns. And here's a group of terns, and some of them are feeding chicks, and then all of a sudden this tern with a carrot beak suddenly stuck its head up from the throng, and Tony didn't seem to notice it, but quite a lot of birders suddenly spat their tea out and went, blimey, look at that. And that sort of was the first time that anybody knew that there was a lesser crested tern on the Farns. I assume it was the same bird that had been at Blakeney Point a little earlier in the piece. I did see it at Blakeney Point, but that must be sort of mid-80s, I suppose. But Elsie came back for several years.
And even raised young with local sandwich terns, which Mark Eaton covered in his Odd Couples piece in Birdwatch recently.
Yes, he did indeed. I think lesser crested tern is one of those birds that's people kind of forget just how rare it is, really, because of Elsie and the fact that she came back so many years running and so many people will have seen it there. And it was actually July 2005 when I ticked lesser crested tern. I saw the bird that was seen in Norfolk and Suffolk during the middle part of that month. That was only about a week after ticking sooty tern, so it was an incredible month for terns. But yeah, I always remember seeing it, the news come up and obviously being very excited. Went to see it, needed it, of course, and a lot of people saw it and there was a big twitch for it, don't get me wrong. But I think at that time, I don't think anyone really realised just how rare lesser crested tern was because of Elsie's continued reappearances for many years. And 2005, wasn't too long after Elsie was last seen. Yeah. And of course, it's been what it was 20 years. People had to wait for the next one. Of course, that's the bird that just fell last winter in Devon.
And it feels like there's been more opportunities to see, elegant tern in recent years than lesser crested.
Yeah, definitely. Another July classic. Terns, of course, being a big part of July action, but also gulls as well. You might want to tell a slightly painful story about a trip to Sheffield one July in.
Yes, Audouin's Gull, which had been found at some sort of recycling centre in the centre of Sheffield. Effingham, I think, was the zone. I rocked up at Effingham early in the morning and I'd missed this Audouin's Gull by about half an hour. Spent quite some time standing around in Effingham, not seeing Audouin's Gull, and it became apparent that it had clearly moved on. So, yeah, it's quite painful. I did try and get some lunch at some point from the effing sandwich emporium, as it was called, but it was closed, so I didn't even get an effing sandwich.
Yeah, I had the same experience. I dipped that as well. And I remember there was a young dipper on the weir, which was quite cool to watch.
I think that was that World Cup final day or something.
I wouldn't know.
No. Seem to recall coming back and watching the World Cup
must
final.
surely know. We'd have to ask him.
Yeah.
You got any painful dips from July that you can recall, David?
That's the main one, that Audouin's Gull. And by the way, I remember a birder in Surrey once pulled me up on saying Audouin's Gull and saying, no, it's a French name, so you've got to say Audouin's Gull. And that's just been cemented in me ever since.
Nice pronunciation.
I don't know if it's 100% right, but yeah, that was how it was drilled into me.
How many other French words do you know?
I'm not good on French. No.
Moving swiftly on. I'll tell you what, actually, let's loop back round to 2013. I was talking about that being an amazing summer for rare birds. It was, but I had a particularly painful dip that year. It wasn't the Frigatebird. It was actually later in the month when what was then lesser sandplover turned up. Now we know it to be Mongolian sandplover. This bird had first turned up in Moray on a beach. I think it was photographed and had already gone by the time the news came out. But a couple of days later, or a few days later, it was in County Cork. It got relocated, exactly the same bird, got relocated in County Cork at Pilmore, which is sort of East Cork. And I was slightly worse for wear. It was a friend's birthday on the Saturday evening. I think it was the Saturday evening. And following morning kind of woke up to news of this bird in Cork. And this was kind of in my peak twitching days. So pretty much woke up, a bit shell-shocked, immediately went on to British Airways, booked a flight to Cork from Heathrow for 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Bear in mind, I'd just woken up at 10 a.m. feeling awful. Hauled myself out of bed, got to Heathrow, flew to Cork, hired a car, drove to the site, and basically was told there's been no further sign of the bird. You know, it was there over high tide earlier in the day, but hadn't been seen since. And you're thinking, fair enough, you know, tidal bird, it'll probably be back on the evening high tide roost. Great. Well, there were a few Irish birders there at the time, and we kind of all split up and walked off in different directions to search for it. And I walked off east down the beach, and they went kind of west up this channel towards the estuary, and been walking for little more than a few minutes, and I could hear a whistle behind me. I looked round and they were waving. I was like, oh, flipping heck, they've got it. So I legged it back. You know, it was only a few hundred yards between us by this point because it hadn't been very long. And I could see them watching intently, watching the bird. And as I sort of walked up, got to them, well, it was actually running, breathlessly said, you know, where is it? And they said, oh, it's just lifted off and it's flown off towards the estuary.
No.
And you think, oh, that's frustrating. You know, we've all been there when you're playing a bit of wild goose chase with a rarity, and you think, you know, so many times over the years that's happened and a bird's dived into a bush, but eventually it shows again. And that was kind of my thoughts. I was like, well, you know, I've got all evening, the tide's coming up, it's just going to show, isn't it? But that was it. It was gone. Never seen again. And I stayed overnight, slept in the car, did the morning tide again, no sign of the bird. And it was just incredibly frustrating because it was a beautiful evening, you know, and you had point blank waders all along the beach, you know, 10, 15 yards away, Dunlin, ring plovers, and you just think, if this bird lands here, it's going to be the dream situation. This bird's going to be right in front of me. But that was it. It was never seen again. So I was on site a few hundred metres from it, and that was it, gone.
And you've got to put up with all the other birders sort of high-fiving each other and clapping each other on the back. And,
it's always the way, isn't it? It's always the way. I mean, waders, July is kind of really synonymous, not necessarily just terns, gulls and other seabirds, but waders really do have a prominent role to play in the sort of July rarity scene, don't they?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, one that I can recall just off the top of my head, that I'll go back to, is 2014, Brean Down, Great Knot.
Yep.
I remember seeing you there.
Yeah, you guys, did you both see it? Did you?
Yeah. Good bird, that one.
It was a hot day for me.
It was a very hot day, yeah.
I remember, you know, the famous stories of the Great Dot. I always remember reading about that as a kid. Did you go for the Great Dot?
I didn't know. I think that was sort of 96, maybe, something like that. I was living in Sweden at the time, so I was out the country.
Was it Seal Sands, that area?
Yeah. I believe it was sort of miles out for most of the time. And then it did at some point come actually very close, and some people got some fab photos, but for most of the time it was the Great Dot.
And that was pretty much the same situation at Brean for most of the time, wasn't it? I seem to recall a heat haze dot at that, badly heat hazed. Well, that was a huge twitch, and eventually got some pretty decent views of it, but yeah, it wasn't exactly stunningly close, let's put it that way, but an absolute mega bird at the time, and it generated a huge twitch, didn't it, that day?
It was definitely a scope job, but I remember getting quite good views of it in the end.
Yeah.
And another July rarity that's turned up, or another July wader that's turned up, is Caspian Plover, Abilady. I think, did people see that one in?
No, that was sort of back before the days of bird guides, and news was still a bit grapeviney. So, yeah, I remember finding out about that sort of, well, almost after it had gone. I think the news came out very late the evening before, and a few people managed to get up there for pretty much first light. And I think it was seen very briefly at first light, and a bit like you with the sand plover, I think it sort of took off with some lapwings and looked like it had dropped down in the next field, and people were turning up as it was getting sort of more and more light, thinking, well, clearly it's just gone to the next field, but yeah, never seen again. One of those ones that just snuck out somewhere around the back and disappeared.
Waders have a habit of doing that, don't they?
They do. I missed the greater yellowlegs at Minsmere back in the 80s by about 15 seconds.
Ouch.
Literally, yeah, it was a bit ouch at the time. Literally sort of putting your hand on the hide door and people sort of coming out going, oh, it's just flown off. Ouch, indeed. It did come back. I think it's hung around for about a month in the end. I saw it about 3 times.
All's well that ends well.
It really feels as though Caspian Plover's got to drop again soon. That would be a real crowd pleaser, wouldn't it?
Certainly would.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like you. I've missed one. I missed the one on Scilly in the spring that was in the 80s.
Oh, did you go for that?
Yeah, there was a special Silonian sailing on the Sunday, so lots of hairy birders went over for that and piled over to St Agnes. No sign of any Caspian plovers.
Yeah, I had a painful one. This is turning into an episode about dipping, isn't it, really? But that's fine. Yeah, I had a very painful, it wasn't July, but I had a very painful experience on Fair Isle with Caspian Plover back in 2008, May 2008. And I think it was found, was it found? Yeah, it was found the previous day, and it was there again the following morning. And there was a bit of a delay in news of its positive continued presence coming out, I think, because it just took a while to relocate. But we got the word that it was there, piled into a charter plane, and off we went to Fair Isle from Wick, after having driven up overnight to Wick, of course. And yeah, as we were arriving on Fair Isle, you jump out the plane full of enthusiasm, excited to be there, thinking, here we go, just a small crowd for this mega bird. And it turned out it had flown off in the minutes preceding our arrival, and the rumour is that it was the incoming plane that had flushed it.
I was going to ask that.
And yeah, that was never seen again. Walked a lot of steps that day, all over Fair Isle, charging around trying to relocate it. But could we relocate it? Could we? Heck. And I've dipped Caspian Plover in a few places over the years subsequently, for example in Israel and various other spots as well. So yeah, would be very happy to see that one fall.
It would be very popular. I hope wherever the next one turns up, it's got lots of parking.
Yes, indeed. Any more positive wader stories from July from either of you?
White-tailed lapwing, you both must have seen that at Rainham.
Yes, yeah. Rainham was sort of about 20 minutes down the road from me, so that was excellent. And again, healed the wound of not seeing one sort of when it was up at Calaverock, I think, which was June one year.
I saw that one.
Yeah, drove up to Calaverock to find out it had gone. And then I think it turned up subsequently Morecambe Bay the following week.
Was it also at Seaforth, or was that the subsequent one?
I think it was the same one, sort of zigzagged around the country, didn't it? And
They tend to do that, yeah. Like the more recent one, the Rainham one that I saw, that was also at Dungeness. I saw it there. So that's on my Kent list too.
Yeah. That one at Blacktoft, that was...
Yeah, I remember that was at Frampton as well, wasn't it? And I remember at the time thinking, surely this is going to... Surely I've got a chance of this in my local area, but it didn't happen. So yeah, July, a very good wader month, but also produces plenty of other surprises too, which we will discuss after a break. Welcome back to the BirdGuides Podcast. We're talking about July rarities today. We've had a little bit of a chat about waders, seabirds and the like, but there have been some other crazy rarities really in the month of July over the years. I think one of the ones that stands out to me in fairly recent times is the Amur Falcon in Cornwall. David, you saw that bird?
Yeah, I travelled down there with Ed and a friend of ours, Magnus. And yeah, this thing was it was a first summer female just sitting by a lane at Polgigger. So we got out, saw all the wacky ducks at the duck pond, walked down, there's a big crowd, somebody was shouting about it having wear that indicated it was a escape, but which, was nonsense. And it just sat there, didn't do very much. We didn't see it flying, but yeah, I think a lot of other people who had missed the opportunity to see the first for Britain at Top Hill Low were grateful for that chance. I think you two are in that category.
Yes, there was one in 2008 in October. I think it actually turned up in September.
That's right.
So, like Josh had been up to Flamborough to see the first sort of twitchable brown shrike, which showed very well. And then there was some discussion amongst the crowd as well, is there anything else around locally? And the only thing that was around was a red-footed falcon at Top Hill Low. And I'd actually seen one sort of earlier in the spring, so I thought, I'll just go and get a big celebratory brown shrike fry up at the calf from the end. So I did that instead and merrily drove back south, sort of within striking distance of Top Hill Low. And then not long after, somebody saw some photos and sort of said, hang on a minute, this red-footed falcon's got sort of white underwing instead of black. And the penny dropped that actually there's been an Amur Falcon knocking around in Yorkshire for, I think it was the best part of 3 weeks. And then, of course, it disappeared straight away.
Yeah, I think that was the really funny thing about it, was that classic situation. Bird's been around weeks, identification realised, everyone's like, crikey, let's get up to Top Hill Low. And I think it had pretty much disappeared the previous day.
Yeah, it was.
People went to
24 hours.
I think people actually went to look for it thinking it could well still be there, and that was it, gone. So, yeah, that was a bit of a boo-boo. I can't imagine that happening again.
No, and people, of course, who had gone, were pretty pleased with themselves afterwards. But I remember it rearing that timeless discussion of, can you count a bird if it wasn't identified at the time, or you didn't identify it at the time?
Yeah.
That was quite a big debate around that bird.
Yes, indeed. But yeah, you'd like to think that people are a bit more au fait with Amur Falcon ID now.
Yeah, well, it's going to be in the July issue. Andy Stoddart's covering it in real detail, so you're going to know how to pick one out from a red-footed falcon.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't really on anyone's radar back in the day. It's just sort of didn't compute that, Britain would be in line for an Amur Falcon.
One of the most extraordinary stories actually involves that previous record in Britain, which was never actually accepted.
The one that had been in France first.
Yeah, and it had been in France first. Was it shot in France?
Oh, it had I think it was shot. I think it was
shot twice.
Hit by a car.
Yeah.
It just had a sort of death wish. This they kept rescuing it and rehabilitating, turfing it out.
Not again.
Yeah, exactly. Sacre bleu.
And then it transpired at the end that it was probably an escape. It was a falcon's bird or something.
Yeah,
bizarre.
Yeah. But they rehabilitated it. They call it a kestrel or something. They misidentified it.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah. It just had such a sort of checkered route, and not accepted.
It's another painful bird for me, Amur Falcon, because I was in exactly the same situation as Ian. I was there watching that brown shrike at Flamborough that day, absolutely meggy. On top of the world, mainland adult male brown shrike, very rare bird back then. Thought it's been a good day, but little did we know that the much rarer bird was just down the road, and no one ever bothered to go and see it. And then when the Cornwall one was there, I was in the Azores. You think going back to that whole thing of the middle of July, it's quiet. There isn't going to be any megas this week, and then there was. But I did have the last laugh because I found a great-tailed tattler, so just thought I'd drop that in.
Oh, nice.
Indeed. It's kind of not really a month for passerines, mega passerines, is it? But there have been one or two. I mean, I think we go back to the brown flycatcher on Farewell back in 1992, which was at the time unfairly booted onto category D.
Yeah, I think there's sort of the understanding of the fact that some of these Asian vagrants can be quite late spring rarities just didn't compute.
And it was still in that era when there was a lot more risk of, the trade in wild birds from Asia was far more rife, wasn't it? And there was far more questions about each vagrant's provenance.
Yeah, I think, 30 odd years on, whatever we are now, everyone's just so much more open-minded about what birds can achieve. And I think that's one of the wonderful things about the learnings of vagrancy.
Yeah.
You look at some of the kind of various reasons given for rejecting records in the past, and they just almost seem a bit archaic now. Not just the brown fly, but I mean, thinking about things like booted eagle.
Yeah.
And, we just live in a time now where we understand so much more about these birds. We realise that birds are capable of much more than we perhaps give them credit for, perhaps just because we don't understand just how impressive flyers these things are. So yeah, I think we're definitely in a better place in terms of understanding these birds and appreciating them for what they are.
Well, back then in the early 90s, modern birding had only been going on for a few decades, hadn't it? So our understanding, as I say, it's come on leaps and bounds in the 21st century.
Yeah, it wasn't, back then it wasn't that far back in time that birding basically involved a shotgun.
Yeah.
I think the first British record of lanceolated warbler was blasted at
Got to do that, didn't they?
Yeah, I think it was in Lincolnshire, actually.
Was it?
Yeah, I think the comment was it that the fella had flushed it from the side of a path and thought it was something a bit odd, and his sort of spaniel had gone and chased it out again and he'd shot it. I think the comment was, although much destroyed, he was able to mount a skin of it. Well, I imagine sort of a shotgun pellet going through a lanceolated warbler would do a fair amount of damage.
Didn't think it would leave much behind, would you?
No.
Gosh.
I mean, there have been some really random records as well in July. One that springs to mind that stands out, probably the sort of thing that would be very easily overlooked or forgotten about by a lot of birders, but one for our Irish listeners, the redhead on Cape Clear. Oh. Do you guys remember that?
No.
It was bizarre. It just turned up on the lock on Cape Clear, this male redhead, in, I think it was early July. It was only there for a couple of days. But this is a time, of course, that a lot of people were ticking the redhead in South Wales. So it probably didn't get the attention that it warranted at the time, but absolutely extraordinary record, just clearly just come straight in off the Atlantic, probably a bird moving after post-breeding movement, even though it was only that time of year, early July. And at the time, just completely and utterly without precedent.
That was gripping, yeah.
Yeah, bizarre record.
But yeah, since then, there was a bit later in the summer, but there was an adult male that turned up in the Azores in August. So, it's set the bar now, and you realise actually these kind of post-breeding movements of ducks, while you don't necessarily expect ducks to turn up in the middle of summer, they can and do so. And probably another one I nearly forgot about, actually, of course, that we all, I imagine, will have seen, is the purple swamp hen at Midsummer, which was twitchable in August, but I think actually turned up on the 31st of July. And then, of course, went on to put in a fairly prolonged stay at Midsummer before relocating up to North Lincolnshire.
Yeah, I saw it in North Lincolnshire from about a mile away, sort of like a sort of semi-burst beach ball sort of in the distance, shimmering in the haze. But yeah, that was a very unexpected and pretty much the only record, isn't it?
Yes, yeah, it was slightly closer in Suffolk and places that didn't quite look like a beach ball, but it was nonetheless, startling bird to see. But yeah, the only one in Britain so far. But again, it's one of those birds that you kind of think we're probably going to get more of in the future, you would have thought.
Yeah.
But 10 years on now.
10, isn't it? Yeah, you're right, it was 2016. That was a very hot day from memory.
Certainly was. I remember ticking Brian Briggs from one of my favourite bands, Stornoway, there as well. So I got 2 quite good ticks.
Was he twitching the bird?
I think he just happened to be there, but yeah, got to say hi to him.
Very nice too. What a day, Dave. What a day.
Certainly, yeah.
Any other July rarities that stand out to you?
Well, I didn't go for it, but I wonder if this was another painful one for either of you. The blue cheek beater at Bockhill Farm. That was another one that famously a lot of people arrived a little bit late for, and then it flew off out to sea.
Yes, I managed to miss that by about an hour and a half. Yeah, a bit of form with blue cheek beater. That's another classic July rarity.
There's been a couple of or so, haven't there? Yeah.
Haven't managed to catch up with one yet, but we always live in hope.
Indeed. Apparently, I think as well, there was the Cumbrian Spanish sparrow. I think that might have been found in July.
Yeah, I think it was, yeah.
You must have seen that, Ian.
I didn't actually, no.
Did you not?
I didn't. That was waterside up in Cumbria, and I think it was there for almost years, I think. I saw the one day in Hampshire. Yeah, that one, yeah.
Yeah, me too.
So, yeah, the waterside one, that was a July bird, which again raised a few eyebrows. Sort of, it doesn't sound like the sort of obvious spot for a Spanish sparrow.
You wonder how it got there, don't you, really? Given that they do seem to show a very strong tendency to show up near ports.
Indeed.
Think about the Landguard bird as well, more recently than the Hampshire one. That was basically on the doorstep of the port of Felixstowe.
Yeah.
On a more local level, we've had some great megas there, been through quite a few of them, many of them which we've seemingly dipped. But on a more local level, are there any highlights that stand out to either of you?
Well, obviously working the King George V Reservoir, it does attract waders as they start to make their way back south. So you never quite know what you're going to get in July, and weather doesn't seem to play that much of a part in it. So you can pop up there on a seemingly calm, hot, sunny July day and suddenly find that there's a little stint or a wood sandpiper on the causeway. More often than not, there isn't. But, when you do come across those, it's fantastic.
Absolutely.
And, of course, things like juvenile black terns occasionally drop in. So, yeah, it does. As you know, with patch birding, it's always worth going out. I mean, you've found all sorts of exciting things on your local gravel pits in the summer, haven't you?
Yeah, I just think the big thing about birding in July is having water on your patch. I do think that makes a massive difference, and there's plenty of water around my area, lots of various sets of gravel pits in various stages of restoration, so you've got nice fresh habitat, and that's the kind of stuff that tends to bring in the birds, waders, as you've mentioned. But I've had some good terns locally. I found a Gull tern in 2022. That was actually on that 40-degree day, the day that Britain infamously broke the 40-degree barrier for the first time. And I remember coming out of the office and walking out into the heat of the day and thinking, my goodness me, this is scary. And decided to have a quick look at my patch on the way home just to see what was there. And shimmering away in the heat haze was this Gull tern just sat there. And
Extraordinary.
Yeah, it lingered a few days. So that was definitely one of the July highlights from a rarity perspective, I would say. I also had Caspian tern in July. Didn't find that one. That was back in 2017. That was a really nice bird. I was actually still living in London at that time, but a Caspian tern on your childhood patch, it was too much not to twitch back for, so I had to come back for it. And very nice it was too, although I have since had 2 more of them, both in June. So yeah, it definitely has potential, but I think water is the key, really. What about you, David?
Well, I'm going to bring it down to earth again here, but I'm getting fond memories back at Cannes Farm with my old patch in South London. I used to look forward to July because there was no water there. That was one of the challenges, but things started moving then. You'd get the odd early wind shout, you'd get yellow wagtails occasionally beginning to fly over. I think I had a common tern flying over there once, and remember not a drop of water at all. So just on an inland dry patch, I have some quite fond memories of July kind of warming up affairs for the autumn to come.
What would you say are the sort of archetypal July rarities that our listeners should be on the lookout for?
Oh, gosh. Well, what would you say, Ian?
Oh, if anyone can find a blue-cheeked beaver, I'd be very grateful.
Yeah. Hudsonian godwit, maybe?
Yeah, that's had some July action, hasn't
And
it?
swifts.
Yeah, swifts as well. I think terns, swifts, the odd wader, sharp-tailed
sand to be hasn't been one of those for a while.
No, I couldn't believe this. Apparently, the last British sharp-tailed sandpiper was 2012, which seems extraordinary.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like it should be that long ago.
It feels like when I was really getting into twitching back in the 2000s, it was kind of one of these near annual birds. Every couple of years you'd get one maybe. I remember there was one at All Marshes that a lot of people saw.
Yeah, I think I saw one at Sandwich back in the 80s.
Yep.
It's not an easy wader to get. There's sort of, as you say, they get a little sort of pocket of records and then blank years. So we're due one. So
yeah, maybe that's the one for this July.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's been a really interesting chat, and I think the main thing that we've established is actually all 3 of us are pretty bad at twitching. A lot of dips covered there, but it is what it is. There we are. That's it for today's episode. Thanks for listening to episode 2. Hope you've enjoyed it. We'll be back very soon. In the meantime, you can keep up with all the latest birding news, views and sightings at birdguides.com, or follow us on social media. And please remember, do like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. We'll be back soon. Thanks for listening.
See ya.
Cheers, guys.
You have been listening to the Bird Guides Podcast. For the latest and best birding content, visit birdguides.com.